Well guys, the RTX 5090 launch wasn't quite what we were expecting, was it? Much bigger increase compared to the RTX 4090, compared to previous gen, the RTX 3090. But still, if you want to build a high-end gaming PC in 2025, there are quite a few differences compared to building one in 2024. So here we are with a high-end PC build guide and how I would build one if I had to build one for myself, for gaming, but also for multitasking, streaming, editing, and a bit of productivity. Here is what I think is the best value for money out there. Now, I do not have a 5080 yet, and I have not tested one, but let's pretend that this one over here is a 5080. It is actually a 4080 Super, which nowadays you can buy used for like 600 bucks, and it's a much better value, but the PC is gonna build around this, pretending it's 5080, or pretending you're smart and you actually go out there and buy a used RTX 4090, which, by the way, I made a video telling you guys before the 5090 dropped that 4090s were going sold for so cheap on the used market because people were preparing to buy a 5090. And literally, I have seen some of the best deals of my life in the past few weeks when it comes to high-end GPUs. And now that everybody knows 5090s are bad, they're going up in price again. So if you listened to my original video and you bought one, you probably made a very good deal. If you haven't, it may be over right now, but there are still a few to get. If you manage to buy a 4090 used, or if you still want to buy one, it's the best high-end GPU to buy right now. And I was actually not recommending the 4090 when it came out, but nowadays, it's a very good buy. So for our GPU for today, again, 5080, 5090, 4090, or 4080 Super, the previous Gen 1 being used, these are the choices that we can get. But the rest of the PC is actually going to be the same in terms of what I recommend. CPU, okay, so I'm going AMD. I actually quite like the new Intel Core Ultra CPUs, but I think AMD is slightly better value at the moment, even though it doesn't have the top of the chart in productivity. So if you want top of the chart gaming performance, buy a Ryzen 7 9800X 3D, even though they're overpriced. If you want the best value for money on productivity, buy this, which is what I have here today, the Ryzen 9 9950X. Or if you want the best for productivity and also a pretty good gaming performer, buy Intel, the Core Ultra 9 285K, but for that you will need very, very fast RAM. For this, you still need good RAM because it's very RAM sensitive, but you can get away with a very good 6000 MHz kit, which is what I have here today. So this is the Kingston Fury Renegade, 64 gigabytes of 6400 mega transfers per second DDR5 RAM with a pretty low latency of CL32. Now, why did I want 6400 MHz RAM and not 6000 MHz RAM? Well, this is due to RAM tuning. So if you want to get the best performance out of AM5, you're gonna need to up your Infinity Fabric to 2067. I will probably do a full tutorial about that, but that basically means that the RAM doesn't have to be 6000 but 6400. So you can get that in overclock, but it's better to just get RAM kits that have that already. So this is what we have here today. Now, since Kingston is making very, very good value stuff, also price-wise really, for SSD and RAM, I've also gotten the KC3000 for the drive. Now this is a 2 terabyte drive that goes to 7000 megabytes per second instead of 7300 megabytes per second or 7400 megabytes per second, like some of the most expensive drives out there, but you get a huge price saving for 400 megabytes per second less, which is very little in comparison. So I think if you're not going Gen 5 drive, this is the best value for money thing to buy at the moment for Gen 4, at least where I'm from. For motherboard, I've just gone cheap and I've gotten an MSI Pro X870p Wi-Fi. There are a lot better motherboards than this, but this was cheap, so I got it. I really dislike this motherboard, but it's what we have to go with. If you have the budget, buy something a bit better, okay? But if you want to save money and get PCIe Gen 5, get this. We need PCIe Gen 5 for the 5080 or 5090, so I suppose you have to buy an X870. But if you buy a B650 or a whatever, B850, which is a bad chipset, you're not really gonna see any real-world performance difference, so you can also do that. But I just wanted to stay balanced here today and get the proper Gen PCIe, okay? Speaking about proper Gen PCIe, we have an ATX 3.1 PSU from the depth of China, okay? And this is the First Player NGDP. Now, you probably have not heard of First Player, but this unit, well, aside from the box being like extremely cool, okay, I have tested this already, but it's the first time I bring it on the channel. And it's a fully modular, fully sleeved ATX 3.1 power supply, 80 plus platinum, with a very good certification, very good components inside, and they actually sell it for relatively cheap because the brand is not quite popular yet. They want to actually compete in the premium segment, so it's not very easy to compete there, but I think, little spoiler for the build, they're gonna be able to do it. It's very, very good power supply. Speaking about new brands on the premium segment, we also have the Valkyria Scene 360. Now this has been on the channel quite a while. I think I've had a lot of Valkyria products lately. I've also reviewed their air cooler, which can handle surprisingly a Core Ultra 7 265K. Fine, I made a full video about it. And their 360mm all-in-one, it's insanely good for the price. And also like the whole unboxing experience is just crazy, crazy good. So this is what we're working with here today. I say we start building it and then we discuss what comes out, okay? Let's go. And here we are with the build finished. Now, if you paid attention during the building process, you will notice that I have actually used Lian Li LCD fans. Basically the very overpriced fans from Lian Li, the TL series, which have an integrated programmable LCD screen. Now the screen looks nice and the fans are not too bad, but they are severely overpriced. I don't recommend you guys buy those, also because the software is not intuitive at all and it's kind of a pain to get it running. So these, not recommended from me whatsoever. Let's move on with what I actually recommend about the build though. But before we do that, let me know if you like the aesthetics of it, because we went a little bit more strange because we have 3 different types of fan. I went with an Arctic on the back because I wanted to keep the black and white theme. And I also think, by the way, this 4080 Super from Gainward, the Phoenix model, has a pretty interesting RGB if it's mounted vertical. So I want to hear what you guys think, or if you would have changed anything, let me know what. And I will take this aesthetic introduction to talk about the power supply first, because it surprised me in terms of how cool the sleeve on the cables was. But I have to point out one issue, which I hope they fix, because this just came out, and the comms, basically if you have sleeved cables, you have comms which you put on the cables to keep them organized. They are too big for the diameter of the cable. So it's a pretty rookie mistake, probably due to production issues. But if they get just a little bit smaller comms, it's gonna be perfect, because now they kind of go around a little bit if you don't really lock them, so that they can improve on. However, aside from that, how modular it is, how many cables you get, it's just very good. And it's super easy to cable manage. Of course, in the Height Y70, it's probably the 4th one we have on the channel. The case for me is a guaranteed that I'm gonna like it. Now the Valkyria cooler, speaking of LCD things, that's actually very good, and I like the software a lot better than the Lian Li one, surprisingly. Even though right now, as I was going to look for the website, it was currently down, so I could not access it. But in this period, it's the new year for the Chinese, so I know a lot of things are shut down, so it does make sense. It is an insanely good performer, and I mean it. So let's transition quickly to performance and thermal testing, because this build is running insanely well. Now, you will notice that it's a fully negatively pressured build, meaning we have no intake fans. However, that's done on purpose, because first off, we had to have the LCD look at us, and I couldn't get the reverse blade fans from Lian Li, so that's the main issue. But if you go full negative pressure, and if you have an all-in-one, and if you have an open air case with a lot of mesh like this one, the air is gonna come in either way. And it's also gonna be just a little bit more silent, which I don't dislike. And I also find, even though theoretically positive pressure should be better for that, I find it gets a little bit less dust in, surprisingly, which again shouldn't really make sense. Here is the Firestrike test of the system. And now, aside from the overall score, which is of course very good, what surprised me is just how cool the whole thing ran. Also because since we have sensors on the fans, we have CPU and GPU sensors on the Lian Li fans, we have the sensor on the Valkyria cooler. If your system is gonna overheat, you're also gonna notice very quickly. So it would be pretty bad to just game and have like 90 degrees everywhere. So it's nice that you can game and just look over and be relaxed that everything is running properly. But it's running like nearly too good. I mean, the CPU is a 16-core, 32-threaded beast, the AMD flagship. And I also ran CPU-Z and synthetic benchmarks like Prime95. And in all of these, we stayed under 70 degrees, even if I had the GPU running as well, which is absolutely crazy. This Valkyria cooler, again, it's not the first one I try, but it's such a good performer. It's expensive, don't get me wrong, but it's less expensive than NZXT, Corsair, name brands. And of course, seeing how good the packaging is, it definitely wants to compete with those. So the performance is there to back it up. I can't complain at all. It's very good. And the same goes, surprisingly, for the Gainward Phoenix RTX 4080 Super. But since we have quite a bit of thermal headroom and we have power supply headroom, we can slot an RTX 5080 or 5090 easily in a system like this. And that's the objective we had in the video to begin with. The only little issue that this build has is the CPU. So it's also the strong point, but it's quite a bit behind in single core performance compared to the i9 14900K and also compared to the Core Ultra 9 285K. Also in multi-threading, it's just losing out. So it is good value, but it's not good for gaming at 1080p. However, if you're getting a 4090, 4080 Super also, or a 5080 and especially a 5090, you should not be playing at 1080p unless you're a very competitive gamer. And if you are a high competitive gamer, you probably want to get another CPU. You either want to get the Ryzen 7 9000X3D, which is the best performer overall, or you want to get an Intel i9 CPU for gaming instead of this Ryzen 9. It's not very good, even though we have really good RAM from Kingston, and I mean like very good. We tweaked it, it's running out of the box on the XMP at 6400 MHz. I went ahead and increased the FCLK a little bit. I have a full tutorial on the channel on AM5, DDR5 RAM tuning, which I recommend you guys check out. And if you just up the FCLK a little bit and run a little bit over 2000 megahertz at 2067, you can get some extra free performance, which is always good. I also recommend you guys go ahead and undervolt your system for more performance. Yes, it doesn't sound like something that would make sense, but it's actually the case with this Ryzen 9, so I recommend you guys undervolt it. Again, for that, we have a tutorial on the channel, so you can go check it out. And I would do it also on the GPU. Something I can also tell you about RTX 5000 is the new NVIDIA lineup is not as power efficient. However, you get it all back if you undervolt it properly. So stay tuned, because we're going to have on the channel very soon a full GPU undervolting guide for the new GPUs. To recap on the build also, of course, Kingston SSD was very, very good. It does all the full 7000 megabytes per second that it promises, and it's just good drive, plug and play, and more importantly, relatively cheap for the category. With that said, we covered everything about the build. Now I want to hear what you guys think. As usual, the comments is probably the most important part of my videos, and I want to hear if you like this build, or if you would have changed it, or if you think it's just pointless to get a Ryzen 9 9950X, because I have to say, it's a good CPU, but I only like it because of value for money. I don't think it excels in anything. However, it's pretty good at everything. So it's not too bad for me, but I want to hear what you guys think. And I also want to hear which GPU would you pick to do this build? Brand new 5080, brand new 5090, used 4090, or used 4080 Super? Let me know down below. And if you watched this far, maybe drop a like and subscribe. See you guys in another one. Bye bye.